Hey y'all, a while back I posted on my community tab that once I hit 2,000 subscribers, I would do some FAQ content, and since a lot of you guys have commented on or asked questions about the instruments that I play themselves, I thought what better thing to start with than a tour of my guitar collection, both present and past. So I know a lot of you guys are fellow guitar nerds and you've more than likely found me through my work with the shops, so hopefully this is interesting to you. If not, no worries, I'll see you in the next video. Now, in this world of consumerist haul videos where people are filming themselves like buying a ton of stuff at Costco, I was kind of worried that this would come across as being like, hey, look at all my material possessions and be a little bit weird and consumerist. But it's a little bit different than Costco, I think. You know, these are the instruments that I make music on. They each inspire me in their own way. And of course, the builders who've made them are themselves artists and artisans. So that's always really fun to talk about. So hopefully it's not super consumerist. And while this isn't necessarily a buying guide or advice video, whether you're on the market for a new guitar yourself or you just like guitar talk, I hope that maybe in me talking about my guitars, why I chose them, what I love about them, etc., it helps inform your own process a little bit. And if you're new to the boutique world, maybe it inspires you to buy a Luthier built instrument on your next round. So in this tour, I'm going to mostly focus on the guitars that I currently own, which are mostly Luthier built instruments. I'll also touch on the Collings guitars that I owned in the past. And if you stay until the very end, you'll get a peek at baby's first guitar, which was, I'll admit right now, a sparkly red Ovation. So you have to stay to the end for that. First up, I've got to start with the guitar that has been the co-star of most of my recent videos, and that is my Brondel A2. This guitar was built in 2014 by Laurent Brondel. It has a Carpathian spruce top and Cocobolo back and sides, which I'll get into in a second. But I'll say when I bought this guitar in 2022, it's my first Luthier built instrument. I never thought I'd be able to afford one prior to that, but at that point I'd been working in the boutique guitar world for a couple of years, and it really felt like it was time for me to own an instrument like this. And I also recognized that I probably wouldn't always have such great early access to such a great stock of instruments and also an employee discount. So I took advantage of that fact and jumped on this instrument when I was also kind of in a point where I wanted a more fingerstyle centric instrument. At the time I had a Collings OM1A-T, which is an awesome guitar, but I wanted something that was a little bit more sort of tailored to my style and my tastes as a fingerstylist, and this guitar really hits all those points for me. Laurent is a French luthier living in Maine, and over the years I got a lot of exposure to his guitars at the Music Emporium, so I knew that I loved his work, but I didn't actually meet him until last year. He was at the Artisan Showcase, and I got to interview him for TNAG, and if you want to check that out, that is over on the TNAG YouTube page, and I'll link that below. My aesthetic and tonal taste generally tends toward the more traditional Martin side of things, but I'm also a fingerstylist. I like a little bit of extra sustain, a little bit of shimmer, a little bit more depth, and for me, this guitar really does kind of have the best combination of all of those things. It's got some nice mid-range, plenty of like sparkle in the trebles, and a nice rich bass, but overall is really balanced, and that's what I love about it. Folks often mistake it for a sew bell, and Laurent does use some similar techniques to Stéphane. He does arch tops and backs, which mean the plates are quite thin and super powerful. I mean, as much as I love my Collings OM1A-T, I don't want to say anything bad about that guitar. It was a fabulous guitar. Me playing this guitar side by side with that one, this one was really powerful, just really punchy. For being relatively the same size, it was a really big difference. Laurent's A2 is essentially an OM in size and dimension, 15 inches across the lower bout, 4 inches deep. Generally speaking, OMs have been my preferred size, both from a tonal and comfort standpoint, though I am getting more into double O's, as we'll talk about later. Now for tone widths on this, like I said, I've got a Carpathian spruce top and Cocobolo back and sides. And generally speaking, I really like Cocobolo. I know it's a little bit controversial, or maybe not controversial, but polarizing. It's often touted as a good alternative to Brazilian Rosewood, but some folks I know don't like it so much because it can sound a little bit brittle to their ears, a little bit too harsh and zingy. My personal theory for why I like it a lot is that I play with a combination of my nails and my finger pads. I don't have super long nails, I keep them on the shorter side, so I've got probably a bit more of a mellow attack than a lot of players do. So for me, having that little bit of extra bite from the Cocobolo actually serves my playing style really well. So that's why I think I like Cocobolo. That's certainly why I like it on this guitar and why I've liked it on other Brondels and other guitars in general. Once again, the top on this is Carpathian spruce, which as I understand is Picea abies or European spruce. Honestly, when it comes to spruces, I'm not as picky. I generally like spruce more than cedar. But as far as like would I absolutely require European spruce top versus Addy or Sitka or Engelmann, I mean, no, I don't think so. From what I understand, the tonal qualities of the spruces can vary quite a lot, tree to tree. So really, honestly, I would probably just listen to whatever luthier I was talking to if I were commissioning a guitar and trust that they were going to give me the right spruce top for my needs, or I would be open to any spruce if I was just trying out guitars in a shop. So I like the Carpathian spruce top, but I'm not married to the concept. The specs otherwise are pretty standard. We've got standard scale length, 25.5, nut of 1 3/4. I generally do like 1 3/4 for just sort of being the best of all worlds. I enjoy playing the classical, which of course has the wider nut, and I have no problem playing a 1 11/16, but because obviously I do play fingerstyle, it's nice to have that little bit of extra room in the left hand and down at the string spacing as well. The neck profile on this is a little bit of a slimmer C shape, which I will be honest, I was a little bit iffy on at first. I hate to admit to being a baby about specs, but it was something that took me some getting used to, but now that I am used to it, I really like it. It's great for doing that more sort of classical position where I've got my thumb sort of in the middle behind, and it also works great for kind of like the cowboy chord position too, so I really like it overall, and not that I'm too picky about neck profiles either, but I've come to really like this one. The finish is a French polish finish, which is really nice. Obviously, I haven't played this exact guitar in nitro next to French polish or anything like that, but I do generally like French polish finishes because they are a little bit thinner and tend to result in a more responsive guitar from what I understand, from what I've experienced. It does make me a little bit more nervous about taking it out, but I'll have to get over that. And then in terms of the aesthetic touches, again, this is something where I really like Laurent's just general approach to his guitar building. He doesn't go for anything too fancy, he doesn't go for a lot of shell or anything like that. His goal is really just to keep the focus on the woods, and so everything is pretty pared down. The bridge, of course, is a little bit unusual looking, and the headstock, he doesn't put a label on the headstock, which is kind of cool. It's got that nice kind of round, again, a little bit Sobel-inspired looking shape. And yeah, it's just overall very sort of simple and classy, and that's what I like about it. All that being said, while I do absolutely love this guitar, I have no regrets about buying it. It really just feels like it suits my style really well. I feel like it's also been a great tool for helping me to evolve further in that style. It is really optimized for fingerstyle in particular. It's not a great rhythm guitar. I mean, you can certainly, play some rhythm on it, but it doesn't quite have the right feel to me, which is why sometimes you'll see me playing a borrowed dreadnought in some videos. And while I do appreciate a good dread, they are a little bit cumbersome for me. I'm a short lady. I don't love to play them seated, and I've been thinking for a long time that maybe my optimal rhythm guitar could be a 00, and that leads me right into the next section of this video. I now have 2 00 sized blind B26 guitars generously gifted to me by Virgil Pilon, the luthier who built them. Like Laurent, Virgil is a French luthier whose build philosophy and style I really appreciated from the get-go, and this B26, along with an OM-sized B30, were actually my first introductions to his work back in 2021, and then I got to spec out this B26 along with another B30 that sold, I think in 2022 or early 2023, so yeah, just super excited to get to play these guitars. So even though these are both 00 size guitars, I find that they have really distinctive voices from one another, and they kind of call me to play them in different ways. This B26, as you can see, is a 12 fretter. So even though they're both short scale, this one feels a little bit, the left hand kind of brings in a little bit closer to the body, so that kind of is a nice comfortable reach. Also has a nice warm kind of gutsy sound, and I feel like I need to learn some bluesier licks to play it and do it really good justice, or at the very least play some like bluesier Travis picking songs, because it is short scale, it's a little bit easier to do bends or to kind of have like wide reaches in the left hand. The top on this is French Alpine Spruce under that nice sunburst finish, and the back and sides are Mahogany under a nice dark finish that really nicely matches that sunburst. And of course we've got Virgil's really cool Art Deco style bridge and different touches. Overall, it's just a really fun guitar to play. This other 00 is a 14 fretter. So even though it's still short scale, I find that difference in the body shape kind of creates a brighter sound overall on this guitar. It's really punchy. It's a great rhythm guitar. I really like playing it in jams. It's kind of a nice sort of foil against a dreadnought because it's got a distinctive voice. It doesn't quite have the same amount of like bass power, but it's really bright and like just, it sticks out really nicely, and it's great for, I feel like it suits my voice really well. The top on this one is Adirondack spruce, so no wonder it's a little bit bright and loud. And then the back and sides are Indian rosewood, which really nice, beautiful set with like a lot of color variation, kind of highlighted with Virgil's Art Deco strip down the back, that Ivoroid binding. Both of these guitars share a lot of traits. They're both lightly built with double X bracing, nitro finish, which I know Virgil does in-house. The neck profile is a nice full C shape, which I like a lot. It's also got a matte finish, which I'm super into. The scale length is, like I said, short scale, 24.75, and I love his Art Deco touches. That bridge especially, it's sort of got this like graduated step-up thing. And then on the headstock, similar to Laurent, he does not do a logo. He instead has another sort of Art Deco feature there going down between the strings. Like I said, I really just liked Virgil's build philosophy from the start. I got to interview him for TNAG, and you can check that one out too. I'll link that in the description below. He has a lot of experience working directly with like working musicians who go out and gig night after night and demand a lot of their instruments, and so he builds his guitars with that in mind. He wants people to go out and use them and maybe even abuse them a little bit, you know, within reason, and he wants them to hold up really well. And he's also spent a lot of time studying and repairing vintage guitars and seeing what works over time and what doesn't. So he builds that into his guitars, and I think you can really tell that. Here is the guitar that gets probably the least amount of media exposure on my channel, despite being one of the guitars I play the most often at home, and that is my Cordoba C9 Classical nylon string guitar. I love this guitar. It's a no-frills classical. I think it was between $500 and $1,000 when I bought it 6 or 7 years ago. Has a cedar top and mahogany back and sides. Nice and warm and sweet sounding. The nut width is 2 inches. And the scale length is a full scale length. It's actually 25.5, which for some reason I just assumed that it was short scale because it feels easy to play, but it is actually full scale. And yeah, I've played a lot of the other Cordobas that are available, and they're all fabulous guitars. I would be happy with any of them. I think I do, when it comes to nylon strings, I think I do like cedar a little bit more. But if you are a steel string player who's looking for a really solid classical nylon string guitar that you'll probably want to play for the rest of your life, you know, unless you get really hardcore into classical music, in which case you'll probably want to go for a boutique instrument there too. These are great instruments. I can't speak highly enough of them. There are also some videos of me playing a jointly owned Waterloo WL-14. I love that little guitar. That's also a 00 size guitar. The one that we have is spruce and mahogany. And if you're not familiar with Collings' Waterloo line, you definitely have to check it out if you're looking for something sort of vintage inspired, super no frills, lightweight but robust, fun to take camping, etc. Like, the Waterloo guitars are so great. It's not going to be as complex sounding as any of these guitars. It's very direct, very fundamental, but that is kind of what makes it so much fun to play. It sits so nicely against a fuller voice dreadnought. It's great for playing leads, for playing rhythm, for chunking out jazz chords, and for doing like folky finger picking stuff too. So it's just a lot of fun to play. Before I dig into my guitars of the past section, I want to thank Gary and Craig for asking some great questions over on Patreon. Gary said, "What guitars do you have and why do you like them?" Which I think I've pretty well covered so far. He also asked, "Where do you set your action?" Personally, I'm not super picky about this. The standard setup is fine for me. I don't like it to be super high, obviously playing fingerstyle, but I also don't like it to be super low either. I measured the Brondel, and it's actually 1/64 of an inch higher than like Stringjoy recommends setting it at, which I'm totally fine with. He also asks, "What strings do you use?" Currently, I am pretty happy with D'Addario standard phosphor bronze lights on all my instruments. I do prefer medium gauge if I am playing a dreadnought. Right now on the Brondel, I've got their coated strings, which I don't love at first. They're a little bit too bright, but once they wear in, they're great. And I can't remember when I even put those strings on, so it is nice to not have to worry about it for a really long time. He also asks, "What's the best sounding guitar you've played?" Which, that is such an impossible question to ask. There are so many metrics by which I feel like any of us would measure a guitar by, and I know for myself, playing different guitars on different days, sometimes you respond to something one way in one setting or in the hands of one person or in your own hands playing different things on it, and trying to keep track of what the best ones were is impossible. I will admit there have been a few pre-war Martins that I was legitimately very impressed by. Like, it's not all hype. There is some magic in those guitars for sure. Is it like mortgage your house magic? I don't know about that, but really amazing guitars. I've also played a lot of Luthier built instruments, recent ones that are just as good or maybe more amazing if you would ask me at the right time. It's so hard to say, and every guitar is so different, and yeah, I just can't answer that question. It's too hard. He also asks, if you could have any guitar, what would it be? And my answer to that is the ones I have. I'm actually really happy with the guitars that I have. I would like to get a redwood and walnut guitar at some point. I think that would be a great counterpoint to my spruce and rosewoods. I am also talking to Jeff Jewett about being a Jewett Guitars ambassador, and we are potentially talking about maybe building a totally new guitar from scratch. So that could be a whole series of videos going on that journey at some point. And if I do that, I'm not sure yet what direction I want to go in. If I'd want to maybe go with redwood and walnut combination and go for more of a fingerstyle centric guitar, or if I want to try to maybe prioritize all around utility, maybe go with spruce and, back inside wood TBD, and try to get something made that really works well for everything that I do. Haven't quite decided that yet, but so I guess that's the other guitar that I'm excited to have. Lastly, Gary asked, you're on the road often. What cases do you use? Honestly, most of the time I either just use the case that the guitar came in, or I also have an SKB backpack case that's very lightweight but still pretty structured. So you could definitely crush something in it if you tried hard enough, but it's secure enough that I feel comfortable putting it in an overhead bin. It's not like a slipcover or something like that. It does keep the guitar safe. And I wouldn't feel too terrible gate checking it. I wouldn't want to check it, but gate checking, I'd feel okay with it. Honestly, if I were a more intensive touring artist, it would probably be a different story, but I'm able to plan my travel and pick my airlines and my plane sizes easily enough that I can get my guitars in the overhead bins, and I almost never have problems with that. So I don't have to throw my back out with a flight case. All right, so now Craig says, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how the 12 fret to the body designs affect string tension and ease of playability. Do they require less finger pressure to play? I would say this depends, and I think it comes down more to scale length and other factors of playability than to the 12 or 14 fret configuration. For example, Collings' Triple O, which is a 12 fret guitar, and Bourgeois' OM model, which is also 12 fret, both come with a standard 25.5 inch scale length, so it's the same string tension as their 14 fret OMs. So there shouldn't be that much of a playability difference there, it's just going to be more of a tonal difference. All that being said, I do feel like when I see a 12 fret instrument, I'm more likely to assume that it's going to be short scale than standard scale length. I don't know if my statistics are right about that, but I feel like it's a safe assumption to make. So if you're going into a shop and you're just trying out instruments willy-nilly and not really measuring anything, you might find that the 12 fretters do seem to be easier to play, but it's because they're more likely to be short scale than standard scale length. Another factor too, like I mentioned with the blind B26 that has 12 frets, is that the shape of the body kind of brings the neck a little bit closer into you, so your left arm isn't having to reach out quite so far. So it does feel a little bit more comfortable to play from that perspective. Obviously it's not changing the pressure of your fingers, but it might feel a little bit more cozy. The other big factor is the setup and action, which is of course adjustable. So you could, in theory, take a dreadnought and set it up to be really slinky like a fingerstyle guitar, but if you walk into a shop, they're not going to be set up that way because most people who go into shops are looking for dreadnoughts for the purpose of flat picking, and they want the higher action so they can dig in with their picks. Whereas the triple O's, the double O's, the single O's, and the parlor guitars are going to be set up with the fingerstyle players in mind from the get-go, so they're going to have a lower action and they're going to be a lot more comfortable to play. So that, combined with a shorter scale length and possibly the 12 fret configuration, is going to make them feel overall a lot more comfortable. So the short answer to all that is that it depends. You can certainly have a small body guitar with super jacked up action, which is not going to feel super comfortable to play, and you can have a dreadnought with a super slinky action, which will feel comfortable to play. But if you're looking for a guitar, if you're on the market and you're sort of trying to find like an ideal comfortable guitar, as a salesperson, I would direct you towards the 12 fret triple O's, double O's, single O's, parlors with short scale and a nice slinky left hand feel. So hopefully that answers the question. All right, it's time for guitars of the past. So it's a little bit funny to me to be at a point in my life where I can talk about having a collection of guitars, because for many years I was a one guitar gal. From 2010 to 2019, I did every gig, played on all of my albums with just one guitar, and that was my Collings OM1A-T short scale. At the time that I bought that guitar, I was coming from a Martin D18V, which I was struggling with a bit because it wasn't a really ideal fingerstyle instrument. Obviously, probably the setup wasn't great for that, and it wasn't great for my attempts to play accompaniment in Irish sessions because, like I said, short lady, a little bit cumbersome when you're playing seated. So I didn't really know a lot at the time about the array of guitars available, but when I went to the Music Emporium, I told my friend Andy what I was looking for, and he matched me with that Collings OM1A-T, and that was just a fabulous guitar for me. This was back in the days before Collings had the traditional series, so it was just the standard specs, and it was of course Sitka spruce top with Indian rosewood back and sides. That guitar always got so much great feedback for its tone. I had a K&K Pure Mini installed in it, and even plugged in, people thought it sounded great. I thought it sounded great. Never had a lot of feedback issues or anything like that. It was just a fabulous gigging guitar. And I will say, obviously Collings is known for their reliability and their build quality. And if you're a gigging musician, there's really not much better you can do than Collings, I think. I can attest to that because that guitar baked in the sun with me at summer farmers markets. It froze its butt off with me playing for November weddings in New England. It went to multiple climates, flew multiple places, and never had issues. The only time I ever remember it being out of commission was when it developed a center seam split because I was really bad about humidifying for a long time. So that was my fault. And that was pretty much it. That guitar was such a great workhorse. So much as I loved that guitar, I did eventually sell it to finance the purchase of a Collings OM1A-T. Because at that point in time in 2019, I was playing more with a flat pick and going more to bluegrass jams, and I was really struggling with the fact that the OM2H had a bit more of a quieter, mellower sound due to being a short scale Rosewood guitar. So I knew that I wanted to stick with an OM, so switching to standard scale length and Adirondack spruce and Mahogany, which had a more fundamental, warmer, sort of direct sound, didn't quite get me to like dreadnought status, but got me a good bit of the way there. It was a good compromise. And though I bought it for the flat picking purposes, it was obviously still a great fingerstyle guitar, very sweet, warm. I mean, if you're gonna buy just one guitar, I feel like the Collings OM1A-T is the way to go for sure. It really can do everything very well. When it comes to the Collings standard versus traditional specs, to be honest, I don't think I have a strong preference either way at this point. I do really like the trad specs because obviously being pre-war inspired and everything, they do sound really balanced and warm right out of the box, and that's always great. But every now and then I'll play a standard, especially one that's a few years old, and really fall in love with that too. So I would take either one. Now, if you want to hear more of the OM1A-T in action, pretty much any video I released in 2020 is on that guitar, so check those out. Honestly, I really wish I could have kept that guitar. It's such a great all-rounder, such a great gigging guitar, but I had to sell it to get the Brondel, and I don't have regrets about that because I love the Brondel. I just hope that the Collings is out there getting a lot of love by someone else. Any other dreads that you've seen me play will have been loaners, such as the one in the Last of My Kind and Marianne videos. That is my friend Dan's Collings D1A. Like I said, dreadnoughts aren't really my preferred body style. They're a little bit cumbersome for me, and I personally find that I'm just not great at drawing tone out of them, which is a little bit of a bummer, but at the same time, they are really unbeatable when it comes to rhythm guitar, so I do like that I get to borrow a good one every now and then. All right, last but not least, the sparkly red Ovation of my youth. So this was not my first guitar. I started learning initially on an old guitar of my stepdad's, but when I was 16, I talked my mom into letting me get my own guitar, and for some reason, I chose a sparkly red guitar. I'll say pickings were slim in Billings, Montana. I don't have any video of that guitar, sadly, but I do have this amazing picture taken by my best friend's parents at our senior year choir pops concert. The theme was 80s, and I did a solo where I performed the Lindsey Buckingham acoustic version of Big Love. Sadly, there is no video footage of that. I really wish there was. I almost forgot with all these acoustics that I did own one electric guitar in the past, and that was a big old Epiphone Joe Pass hollow body electric. I played that a lot during my days of being really into jazz and when I first got started at Berkeley, and sadly, I also don't have any video or audio of that one, but I do have this amazing senior portrait, so that's your reward for watching this whole video. Why yes, I am wearing office slacks with sandals. I was a very cool teenager. So that's my whole guitar history. I'm honestly not sure who out there is going to watch this entire video, but if you did, congratulations, you're a certifiable nerd as well, and I'm delighted. Again, I'm hoping that this didn't come across as encouraging consumerist, needlessly collecting behavior, but rather sort of showed the ways our instruments become a part of our lives, our styles, how they shape and direct us, and what they make possible. I'm definitely a big advocate for searching out the right instrument, and you don't have to take out a second mortgage to get it. So thank you so much for watching, and if you're not already subscribed, please do. Every month I release one tutorial or commentary style video like this one, along with weekly music videos. I also have a Patreon where you can support my work and get early access to these videos, along with MP3s and bonus content and tabs. So if you're interested, check out the link in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.